Okay, thank you for your patience. We had a nice little break to recover. So I'm going to repeat again the panelists for you, for everyone who joined late. So to the left side of me is Jack O'Halloran from Scale Labs. We have Jasmine Zhang from A&T Capital. We have John Isaguirre from Binance and Rina Stedel from Citadel One. Our moderator will be Danku. Thank you and have fun.
Hi everybody, good morning. Great to be here. Myself also as a validator. It's always great to talk about staking, right? And I think in general, let's be honest, we're in a bear market, right? So talking about scaling probably is right now the right time to think about what's happening next, right? And that's what I'm very happy to have you all here to address this topic. And I mean, it's crazy to talk to all of you which have a lot of experience in this and are also looking into the future. I would like to start with you, John, and asking you a question. And I mean, if we open crypto Twitter right now, we see a lot of Binance, right? We don't talk about the topic right now, probably. Let's talk about scaling at the moment. So getting to 1 billion people, right? The question is maybe to start also, why is it important to talk about scaling and maybe also have a goal with this kind of 1 billion people to start staking?
Yeah, you guys hear me? Yeah, okay, good morning. So, yeah, 1 billion people seems like a large number, but when you speak about technology, you see that basically is everywhere. Either it's going to be your mobile phone, either it's going to be the way you rent out an apartment through Airbnb or any other kind of social media out there. So the 1 billion goal was set by Binance co-founder a few months ago on how you can convert Web 2 to Web 3. And the way the organization is seeing it is not by recreating the wheel, but like giving easy access to the end user and learn how to navigate the waters on Web3. Currently, we're seeing that all our infrastructure is fantastic for us because we are in that field, but for the average user, it's still very difficult to learn how to deploy any kind of Web3 technology, whether that's going to be MetaMask or Trust Wallet or even an exchange like Binance. It's just harsh for them to do that. So from the Binance angle, the recent investment on Twitter is going to be either a bit easier for the conversion rate to perhaps reach out that number, and from a BNB chain perspective, from the layer perspective, what we're trying to do is to give a better library to all the developers to learn how to build on top of the network, and therefore also opening the validator opportunity for any companies and groups out there that want to validate and become a node operator on the BNB chain, which in the past has been a bit close up to anyone else. So inclusion, better education, and just usability, whether that's going to be UX, UI, or implementation of the technology, needs to be easier.
Jack, let me ask you, right, as a founder in the space, if you hear 1 billion, is it an opportunity or are you maybe afraid? Also thinking about infrastructure, are we ready for that already? I mean, we know, right, the topic of right now there's an NFT mint, everything goes down, it's still happening, right? How do you see that topic?
So I think the technology is no longer the hurdle, which is a nice thing. I think we're still at the very beginning of this process. And I think just confidence from both retail community as well as institutional is still at the earlier stages, and there's inherent risk, right? If you're staking compared to just getting a return on lending, there's just a different risk level. But one of the things I think about is there's always this total value staked metric, but what is the total value lost from people who aren't staking every year? And I think that loss aversion is going to get people incentivized to go and get in the game, because if you're holding tokens and not staking them, you're effectively throwing money away or giving it to other people who are staking.
Got it. Rina, let me ask you, why do you think people are not staking right now, right? So is it more like a topic of, I don't know, they are still averse to cryptocurrencies as a whole, right? We need to bring them in. Is it a UI UX problem? What do you think?
Yeah, like coming from a UX perspective, it's always been unequivocal how you need to make it easier for people to actually onboard and sustain. and how much of the problems we have right now with staking, like, market fragmentation, like various ecosystem, educational issue, right? People do not understand how to stake. They do not understand the terminology. Sometimes it's also like the fragmentation of solutions existent. So like rewards management, right? It's been hard. And so I guess UX is here to actually nudge the majority of users, like, these mainstream users, to actually create this value. And so like UX can, through interface level, provide an easy access. And so it's very important to point out that we have like custodial solutions, and they are basically like the best in terms of the user experience, right? But we also have a lot of retail users that are like lacking engagement, and engagement is gained through non-custodial solutions, because thus you can actually involve people in some other side activities and various scenarios like governance, I don't know, like DeFi applications, some liquid staking solutions as well. And so what we thought would be like a really nice thing to scale the staking, the staking population in general, is to create a kind of a complex scenario for users to get onboarded, still remaining the non-custodial perspective, but have this like coming from the the debit card just directly to the staking application, with the ability to manage the the staking rewards right away, with the ability to use the staking assets further, and it's totally doable via the staking interfaces, and this is how we scale.
Got it. Let me ask you another question quickly, and then also go over to John in that direction. Is like, if you onboard right now family, friends, do you also talk about staking? Is this part of this, or is it like, that's already next step, it's going into DeFi, it's maybe too complicated? Be honest, right? When is the last time you talked to your family? Before the last crash? I don't know.
Mama would not be able to set up MetaMask. But anyways, it's like I've been running lectures, like public lectures on staking. So I was onboarding like people above 50 to staking, and it's been really hard for them to actually understand how it works in general. Not only the proof of stake concept, but the general in terms of the the general interface interaction, how to choose the validator. Ethereum staking is just like absolutely nonsense for them. And so the main issue was the key management, I guess, and yeah, I'm trying to get people onboarded to staking as much as I can, because it's a good financial instrument, and with time being, like, people be understanding this, and the easier it is to be onboarded to staking, the easier it is to get like this sustainable flow of users.
John, how do you see it? Is it also a challenge of UI, UX, also specifically for Binance? How do you see this? You're right now anyway approaching the mainstream, right? I think very successful. Is it people are afraid of staking, or is it just that they don't even aware of this opportunity?
It's a mix of everything, man. Like so crypto assets are risky assets by definition. So again, if you want to reach out the 1 billion users, first you need to think, okay, how can they really be converted into a loyal user that not only understands the technology, but also the reward that that person or that company is going to get. So usability, again, is a big thing. And not only by learning how to stake or the purpose of it, but also how they're going to do it. And again, we're talking about the regular client out there, the regular user out there. So the usability needs to fit. Also, even the visuals need to make sense, right? It's not about just clicking and start earning. It's just, okay, what's the customer journey? And this is what we're definitely looking not only into Binance, but also into the more decentralized tools that the ecosystem has, whether that's going to be Trust Wallet or PancakeSwap or any kind of a node delegation on the BNB chain. So yeah, usability is a big issue in our industry, and we're working hard to make that change, on a broad scope. Now, from a more technical perspective, I think the documentation really matters, and also in the past, I think I don't have to explain to anyone in here, but BNB chain has suffered from what some people call centralization, which in fact, it's a fact compared to any other chains. However, on the recent issue that BNB chain had with a possible hack of over 500 million, what also we realized, and I'm talking not only from a technological perspective, I'm talking from a more institutional perspective, what we realized is a matter a degree of centralization is actually not bad. So we were able to contain what was supposed to be over 500 million hack. We were able to manage it to not over 120 mils. And also to kind of understand the why, the logic, the tools that those individuals or group used, and how we could make it more transparent for the community so the community understand what was the reason for it. Of course, we need to improve many things. We're here to learn, and we decided to open an open conversation with the community so they can tell us some feedback on what we need to implement in terms of security and risk tools.
Yeah. You mentioned now a few times also institutions. We talked about UI, UX in general can be improved. Jasmine, you're in touch with a lot of institutional players, right, as a whole. Do you think that UI, UX, which seems to be relevant for mainstream, is also something relevant for get more institutions in, or are there other topics that you think need to be tackled first?
Actually, I think like the voice like a system, I mean the sound system a bit bad, so I didn't really like hear the question so well. But I guess what is the obstacles for institutions to enter like a staking? I think like firstly, for institutions to get acquire like cryptocurrencies, it's already like one burden. So without having like tokens like a holding, I mean, let alone like a staking, right? I mean, you have to have the first step. And then for the institutions, I mean, like which token like to buy, and also like the tokens can be like highly like volatile. And then like a lot of like also not really valuable like a quality like tokens. So I guess for them, it's still like, a big like kind of difficulty to think like which tokens like to really hold. And then like later on, it's like because a lot of institutions, I think they hold tokens for the hedging reasons. And then for staking, you also have this kind of like unlock like period. And then imagine like the market have like a big volatility like period. Maybe now, like with the two big like top leaders in cryptocurrency like exchanges doing like this kind of fight, they will be very hesitating to enter like such business. And then imagine the unlocking period takes like 7 days or 14 days or even longer, then they wouldn't be able to like exit or like hedge like very well. So I guess like it's also the design like from the tokens itself. But I guess the main like obstacle is like to have like more valuable like assets like in the space. But also, like, I guess, it's need regulations. But I guess regulations is something very passive to do. Like from the crypto industry, we have to also do something more active to do more like UI UX design like better. But also like I think take more proactive like actions, like doing more educational, like kind of like conference like what Staking Rewards like is at the moment doing, gather everyone like here. I guess like that would be like the first step.
It's interesting because some of you guys already mentioned topics like liquid staking, derivatives could be maybe an opportunity to simplify stuff for people. How do you see this also, Jack, from a technical perspective, right? Could be liquid staking derivatives an opportunity to get more people in, you can trade it, you don't have a lockup period. Do you see then smart contract risk on the other side, right? Are we introducing something like getting rid of complexity? How do you see this topic?
Yeah, I think the perception from protocol builders has changed over time. I think initially there was just a huge fear of large institutional providers providing this kind of like staking as a service or invisible staking. Like, so right now you can go to Binance and stake scale, and you don't need to know anything about the tech. You're actually not interacting with a smart contract. You have insurance on the value you stake. But initially that was perceived as a really bad thing. But I think now people are kind of recognizing that we're not going to get to 1 billion users by having 1 billion people interact with smart contracts. It is critical, though, to make sure we do have decentralization and that smaller validators are supported, not just the big validators that are providing staking as a service to the bigger exchanges and the bigger institutional players. But I think there has to be a good balance and a good mix, because the more people that are aware of staking and the more people that are participating in networks, even if it's abstracted away, is a positive thing for the industry.
Talking about abstraction, right? One of the most important topics for staking is also governance decisions, I get specifically. So how do you see the topic of, Rina, I wanted to ask you, in terms of, do we need to make staking even easier, right? Should we say that staking is just about securing the network, creating yield? And should we maybe get rid of governance for a certain amount of people and make it more simple? Or is it such an important piece that we should always keep it together, right? Is it right now too complex for 1 billion?
Yeah, 100%. So like, We've seen a lot of things, like me coming personally, from the Cosmos ecosystem. It's been a huge topic right now. So like stakers and Cosmos ecosystem, for those who don't know, basically, they are granted with the opportunity to vote on various proposals. So it's not only on validators' behalf. So, and engagement's been, pretty hard. So I do believe that the only way to sustain for staking is actually to create this, opportunity for users, for stakers to be, involved in processes within the network to actually, get things affected, and, everything is to be determined by the community. So I do really believe that staking is not only about, just securing the network. Of course, it's a vast majority, of the staking purpose, but also, the community engagement is something that is, that is to onboard some more people and make it like way more mainstream. And also I have a question, coming to the previous topic, if you don't mind. So what do you think is the best way to distribute stake across liquid staking validators, like for an ecosystem? Because it's been a, a vastly discussed topic. So. Yeah. So so when we come, to the perspective of liquid staking protocols, the stake is being distributed among various validators. There are multiple ways to do that. So you can either do it proportionally, you can do it equally. You choose the validator specifically, or you can let user choose the specific validator you will be liquid staking with. So, what do you think is the best way?
Well, so I think you're getting at how does this distribution happen, right? And I think the big question is, how do you maintain decentralization of stake when you have these easy on-ramps and abstracted away, simple, almost invisible Web3 experiences? And I think a lot of that needs to happen at the back end. And so, hey, we're here at the Staking Rewards Summit, and going to dashboards that give you that type of information are critical. And I also think free market forces help. And so when people do have visibility and people say, hey, there's a lot of stake happening here, then you're going to see certain validators start changing their rates and being more competitive. But it is a benefit to the Binances and Coinbases of the world to make sure they're on the back end distributing their stake, because the networks are stronger, they're less brittle, they're more, all the values of decentralization grow if they understand, that they may get less business efficiency, but they're going to build stronger networks by distributing their stake on the back end.
The question is also right now, being here at the Staking Summit, right? Everybody knows and understands what staking is all about. Do you see, I don't know who wants to answer this, a challenge that right now people talk about staking while it's not the native staking anymore, right? It's not about securing the network. It's about staking NFTs. It's about staking coins in a protocol to make governance decisions, right? John, do you see this as a challenge right now, or does it maybe help to onboard more people to the topic of staking?
I mean, if we're talking about 1 billion people, not everyone is the same. And not every single organization will be thinking the same. There are going to be some people and some organizations out of that 1 billion that they just want to be fully decentralized, or they really care about the governance of a network. There are going to be some other people that are looking more ROI and profit based. There are going to be some other people that they just want to build some kind of cool layer on top of an NFT reward mechanism, and that's fair. Honestly speaking, that's what makes Web3 interesting. There's always going to be some sort of innovation out there that, some people are going to, care about it. Some others are just going to be like, oh, okay, that's not interesting or relevant for my business structure or for my daily routine. And that's okay. But what I do think, though, is that staking as a mechanism itself needs to be implemented more in our routine as a Web3 community. So what I continue, or what I think we all continue seeing, is that sometimes not the case of Staking Rewards Summit, of course, but in some other conferences or meetups and everything is fiat based. So we're talking about Web3, we're talking about crypto, we're talking about this and that, but everything is fiat based. So you're gonna get some coffee, you need to pay with euros or USD. You're gonna, you're gonna get a sticker and you still get a physical sticker. So for the average citizen that decides to come to the conferences or listen and learn about it, they're not having any proper interaction with the technology itself. They're just listening to the theory, but they don't have any praxis itself. So how do we reach 1 billion users or customers or community? I will say we need to start implementing the technology, as bad as it might be right now from a UX and UI perspective, but it needs to be implemented. Why? Because we humans learn from one another, and there's going to be perhaps one individual out there that is a guru in UX and UI, doesn't know anything about crypto, but might be like, this can be tweaked, this can be changed, and this is how you do it. But you need to showcase the technology out there. So I think staking as a mechanism is very early, very early stage. There is a lot to improve, and frankly speaking, from an operational perspective, the business itself has become heavily centralized. So I do agree with you as well. I think the big players in the ecosystem need to not only decentralize more, but explain why decentralization matters, and the average citizens should support it and should implement and build on top of it.
Got it. Jasmine, let me ask you right now, because we listened to John right now, understanding of we probably need more use cases, right? We need to also use it here, probably directly and interact with it. If you could change something so that more people understand staking, what would you change? Is it more education or, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like what John said is very interesting. I'm also thinking like now like there are so many NFTs being like staked. Even though I myself is not a big fan of NFTs or like a metaverse, but I still think like it's a very easy to understand topic. If it's an easy to understand topic, then like people from like Web2 world, it's easier to like get on board. I mean, imagine to do like a DeFi, like, or even like liquid staking. I think it's also like, you have like the staking and then you liquidate, and then like also like you stake. You use it like other like DeFi protocols. I think for most people it can be still very complicated. But if you say like something like with NFTs, like a lot of people get hyped on it, and people will be started to understand, okay, what is NFT and like how did it work, where to store it. It's actually a good way for like education. Especially it's also fun, right? I mean, sometimes can be ridiculous, but also like extremely fun. So I think it's a very good way to actually get on board more people, and then like the people really have value in it, could really like a stay like afterwards. And I think what could change is like I think in terms of, because we are an investment firm, and then what we always see is like we will also want to invest is like something that is in demand, that is like necessary to have instead of like good to have. Considering like, for a normal VC fund, it's like a fund life. So good to have maybe something like, good to have in 20 years or 15 years, but like normally the VC fund can have like a much shorter like a fund life. So we have to think like what is really like in high demand. And I think like at the moment, for example, like if you make like a staking more intuitive in a way that, for example, everyone now have like a wallet. And to make wallet staking more intuitive, have like a better UI UX, and then make it easier to stake any like kind of like assets you want to stake, or like through, for example, staking rewards like a website. You can like have like a very clear like overview of like all the data like regarding like staking, and then easy to like stake on it. I think that would be like also very like good to have like onboard more users.
Yeah, got your point. I mean, yeah, the easier it is, the better it is to onboard people, to get them in. Something interesting that you said earlier, Jack, is also the topic of we need more people to stake, and if we see 1 billion, that's a huge goal. But then, of course, I'm a DeFi degen. I'm also trying to get yield, right? The yields will go down probably, right? The more people stake, that's just how it works. Do you see any challenge long term if we have 1 billion of people that the yields go down, and then it's like, I don't know if I should even stake at all because I could be trading a bit and getting more out of it? How do you see this? Is this a challenge, a possibility?
Yeah, I look at myself, and when I think about, when I'm staking because I really understand the protocol. I want to help the protocol. I want to help the chain. It's more than just, what return am I going to get on these tokens? And I'm thinking about the governance, and I'm thinking about the security model. I'm thinking about the term of my stake period. And a lot of people aren't going to do that. They're just like, I'm holding the tokens. How much extra do I get by doing this activity? And so I think there will be a spectrum, and when you have that spectrum, people like me and like everybody here, we're all here probably in this category of understanding protocols and understanding networks. We're resilient through the ups and downs, but the more retail-focused people we're gonna see, I think, probably huge drops and dips in terms of staking. But the other nice thing about staking, I think people stake and they kind of forget about it. So maybe there's going to be less volatility as well, makes things more sticky. But to the points prior, education's critical. We got to get like people understand what they're doing, then we will have more sticky and less volatile periods.
Interesting. Another question I have for you, Rina, and then also for John, in terms of who will now lead it to the 1 billion? We now talked about retail, we talked about institutions, so do we need to bring more institutions in, and then the retail will follow later on, right? Or do you think that, first of all, institutions, everybody will see that there's opportunities, and then the mainstream just said, almost forgot it, I need to go back in? What do you think?
Honestly, like as I've mentioned before, and also in terms of UX too, I do believe like, you know, the custodial staking like institutions are here to lead because they're the trendsetters, right? And the retail is there to and the retail is there like to follow basically, so we need to provide, you know, additional maybe incentives, enough like, you know, opportunities to actually get into this ecosystem for retail users. But yeah, I do think like institutions are here like, you know, to be the first. But I also like, I'm very questioning the thing if, you know, institutions should run their own validators, because, you know, it'd be, you know, contributing to centralization as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, institutional clients jumping into Web3 is inevitable, so that's going to happen. I'm not a fan of it, mostly because when you have a group of individuals or companies that already control vast amounts of power on a Web2 basis, these individuals or these companies have had a track record of 70 and sometimes even 100 plus years. Let's take an automobile company, let's say Mercedes-Benz. These guys have been around for ages. They hire the best talent they can get from Web2. So having such a brand and such a company jumping into Web3 means that they're not only going to bring centralization, not because they're evil or whatever, it's just the way they operate, but also they're going to bring bad habits. And that's exactly what we, on a smart way, need to dodge. And we can do that with education, we can do that with training, and just to make it appealing. However, I think the 1 billion is going to come out of the people, out of communities, out of DAOs, out of the change in the mindset of the community itself. And I mean, I have a clear example. I never had a Twitter account, and I opened my first Twitter account 2 weeks ago. I never believed in it. I never understood the hype for it. I don't believe in social media myself, so I don't use it. But I was kind of forced to do that, and that's fine. And I discovered this new world of opportunities that people for ages have been telling me about. I don't even know how to tweet or use it. But it tells me that we are still so early in terms of technology that in order to embrace that 1 billion, we don't even know what's going to be built in the next years, let alone what Web2 will bring into Web3. So institutional clients, sure, they're welcome. We are welcome to kind of make them understand what's the sexiness about Web3. They taking control? No. That needs to be filtered, and that needs to be kind of, managed. We need to manage some expectations in there.
Let me ask you directly, who should run validators then? Do you have any opinions about that? Because the institutions have probably the money, right? It's difficult to get into a set, right? In a bear market, probably the attention is difficult to get for people that just want to spin up a node and get into the network itself. Any thoughts about that topic?
Well, that's a very good question. And the way I see it is that networks are each network is taking its own path. The thing is that we don't see it right now because we're in the middle of the hurricane, but I do observe that networks are becoming its own force. So perhaps Flow is going to be the network for advanced NFTs, and then Ethereum is going to be the kind of the lab for everything to happen. Cosmos might be the more experimental chain, BNB might be the more institutional chain. So I think that networks are each taking their own turn, and Who might be able to run that? I think the communities within that chain. So people that are going to be super bullish and super creative on NFTs, they might say, I'm going to stick to Flow and I'm going to build myself in there a nice niche market and a nice niche community, and I'm going to become that kind of validator that moves forward the network and the governance of it. So I think it might depend on that path that each network takes, and the community will follow. Hopefully it's going to be like that. I do not see that cross-chain capacity between institutional clients deploying their capital and their resources into multiple chains. I do not see that. I don't see why Deutsche Bank will go to BNB and then Cosmos, for example. I wouldn't understand why, but maybe I'm wrong. So.
I have a question. Do you think like foundations should get involved in managing, the institutional influence, like, institutionals launching nodes within the set or not?
I think the technology needs to be built first, and the law has to be input in the smart contracts. So as long as the code remains the law, then it's fine. And of course, there might be a committee, I don't know if you guys agree, but there might be a committee inside of the foundation that, all right, let's say that they managed to overtake the law, the code, then there is a committee that evaluate. But then again, we need to bring some sort of democracy as well. So whenever a network decides who's in and who's out, then this is where perhaps corruption comes into, like human corruption comes into place, and that should be avoided to some degree.
Actually, hold a slightly different opinion. I think at the moment, from a investment perspective, you see so many Web2 companies. I mean, investment bankings or just Web2 internet companies. It's coming inside in terms of investment. And then imagine they invest in a big amount of tokens and they don't do validator on it. I don't think it would make sense. I think it's actually good to have more diversified kind of parties to be all run like validators, because the more diversified parties they are, they can also just hold on each other, right? I mean, just imagine one big community, and then most people run the validators. It's always these ones, and then it's always the ones who have already the network effect to do the same thing again and again. Then it's hard to say one day they will not do slightly evil things. And then I think also with the institution, they run validators, they have probably necessary kind of technology to maybe to reduce the possibility of a downtime or slashing, all of these possibilities. So I think with more investment coming from that field, it's necessary to have them also started to run their own node. And I think that is also something institutions will be inclined to do it, because there are a few areas I think for them it's very easy to understand. Staking is definitely one of it, and auditing such things. If you let them to understand how does Ethereum or Scale make money, I think that'll be different level. But this is something they can compare with Web2 world. So I would definitely welcome institutions to run validators on their own.
Interesting. Bringing it a bit to the end, also we learned you have now a Twitter account. We know now that Reddit started a lot in terms of Polygon also having NFTs. We know that Instagram is also going in that direction. Let me ask you, do we need to talk about staking as a whole for the mainstream, or could it be a topic in the background which is more technology driven, right? And people in the front end are doing other stuff. Do you see this as a challenge, opportunity? Is it relevant?
I think one of the goals, especially on the application side, and Scale is very focused on UX-friendly applications. There's zero gas fees, and so our whole goal is to help end users use applications that, they get the benefit of Web3, but not all of them need to actually know they're using it. And it's unrealistic to think we'll get to hundreds of millions or billions of users if everybody needs to know how to, plug Ledger into MetaMask. Now, I think that kind of just goes back that staking as, an understanding is a very powerful thing, and but we can't rely on that value and that philosophical approach to scale the industry. And so I think critical people, influencers, people involved with voting, people that are active in communities, they need to know, but our end users don't all need to know, and hopefully they'll be staking through UX friendly interfaces, but it's a sad reality of scale, of scaling anything.
Yeah. Do you see it the same, Marie?
No, I don't have a structured opinion on that one. I just like, for this one, we'll see. We're working on UX, we're getting ready for mass onboarding, and then we'll see what's happening.
Yeah, why I was laughing also listening to you and then asking you is like, we met yesterday, right? And I said that I was not aware of the nice app that you already built at Citadel One, and I think that's also a problem in general, right? That we have a lot of solutions, but people are not yet aware. That's why we have this kind of great setup here to also talk about it, present stuff, and then people can hopefully use it. But as you said, we're still early, right? So let's see where this is going. We're at the end of this panel. Thank you very much for taking the time, for answering all the questions. And yeah, I hope that everybody had a great time. And I guess you're still around. So if somebody has a question for you guys, right, just hitting you up and then asking the questions. And then I guess next topic is specifically institutional players, which I think is also cool. So thank you very much for your attention, and then see you soon.